Welcome to the December 13th UDL Implementation Trials Mentors User Group Network meeting. The agenda is linked in the UDL Forward Community Trials Mentor User Group.
So our objectives for today are that we complete our project partner requirements for September through December. We're going to have you help us gather mentor user group network meeting feedback. We're going to introduce the trial reflection portion of the toolkit. And throughout the time that we have together, we want to engage in idea exchange and problem solving around our UDL implementation trials work. And you may be still using your Learn, Do, Reflect journal, and we invite you to use that for today's learning as well, so you can capture some of your own notes if our notes that we add to our agenda doesn't reflect the learning that you've done on your own here.
With that said, we're going to get started. We'd like to know, based on your work so far, which role have most of your mentor responsibilities aligned to over the past month? Okay, so it looks like we have a good chunk of votes as we continue voting. Let's see. So it looks like we have lots of folks wearing the planner hat as expected. Facilitator, advisor, and learning leader as well. The baseline and trial work does really leverage your planning hat. So with that said, as we kind of kick off today, we wanted to just go over a few meeting slides in order to kind of give you some visuals to work with. So the first one, we know that, in 2 hours, people sometimes have things come up. We do have a little break time planned for you later on, but please feel free if you need to use the restroom, if you have to take a phone call, if something comes up, to take care of yourself. We are planning quite a bit of interaction and sharing today. So we're going to ask that, if you can have your cameras on as much as possible so that if a camera's off, we know someone needed to step away, as opposed to, wondering if you're available to share something that would be very helpful. Again, to avoid background noise, if you're not sharing, keep yourself muted. And then we're going to ask that, even if you aren't kind of far along into the process, to share or ask questions as much as possible. This is our opportunity to learn with and from each other. And hope is that through the idea exchange and the problem solving and the rich dialogue, we have opportunities to really enhance and address challenges that we're all experiencing as we go through the trials work. So with that said, we're going to start with just a quick overview of some of the project partner requirements. Joe and I are kind of looking at the timing. The year, it's December, and we do report to the Department of Public Instruction. And so as we prepare our mid-year reporting, we want to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row and your information is included. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Joe to talk a little bit about the partner commitments and what we're hoping to accomplish today.
So what we're bringing forward is those commitments that you've made that support your district completing the project partner agreement documents that we will need to be able to report to the DPI. And those include the UDL implementation trials participation log. And most folks have started that, but we'll go into that so I can show you exactly what parts aren't completed. We need folks to complete the mentor survey and administer the educator survey to team members. And that means each person that's in our meetings needs to complete that mentor survey, not just one person from a district. And then we want that educator survey to happen for everybody that's doing the trials within a district. And we're now going to also be looking specifically at those baseline and trials data submission. So we'll talk through that just a little bit. And then the after session mentor user group survey. So let me just run over to the agenda here, click over to the agenda. The project partner agreements, remember, those are the 2 sheets that you access. It's a PDF form that's accessed through this Google form, and it's a PDF, and it includes a release for us to be able to use any of the videos or any images that you provide to us, any quotations from anybody on your team. We can use that in the toolkit, as well as data sharing, so that we have an agreement that we can use your data to be able to report back to the DPI, the consolidated data. The UDL implementation trials participation log, like I said, most people have started filling that out, but there's some missing pieces that we'll need as well. And for the most part, everybody's filled out these first sections. Remember, there's a row for each teacher that's on your team. And then the part that we hope that everybody can get completed today is to give us counts of students in those observation classes. So this first block of counts here is going to be the total number of students within that observation class. And then likely you'll have the same numbers for these next set of blocks. These are the number of students that each teacher is monitoring as their indicator students within each of those baseline and trials. So as an example, you can see how for, I'm just going to pick on Sun Prairie here. Sun Prairie has their number of indicator students. That's going to be a different number than the number of students in the observation class, most likely. And it's probably likely that these numbers are going to be the same. Like you could copy and paste this number between the baseline and trial 1 and trial 2 and trial 3. But we also need those numbers to be updated if the number of indicator students changes because a student transferred out or that student was absent. So that's what we meant by the trials participation log.
It's important to remember also that because our funding is coming through IDEA, there is a requirement to include students with IEPs.
And so let me just, there may be students in one teacher's class that do not have IEPs, and that's okay. You have teachers on your team, so it's by the district, not necessarily by per teacher. And then the UDL Educator Practices and Student Learning Survey. This is the survey that the teachers do at each trial reflection meeting, the baseline and trial reflection meetings. And again, we want every teacher to fill this out because we're monitoring our impact on your teachers through your work. You also, your district will get an individualized data analysis sheet where you receive that information as well, and you can use that as part of your communication to admin. You can use that as part of your communication within your district to show how this process is able to impact educators and their how they see their students. And then the baseline and trials data submission. For those districts who are using My Impact, we have access to your data and it's already been transformed. So you don't have anything that you need to do with that. So your data has already been submitted. For those districts who are not using My Impact, you are using the data collector, and that data, before it's shared with us, needs to be transformed. And the information that we need is we need counts, and we need consolidated engagement and academic data that combines the 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s and gives us percents. And it's really this consolidated engagement and academic data disaggregated by student groups that's going to be what we leverage the most. So if that could be your first work to do, that would be very helpful. And this trials observation data transformation tool can help you learn how to do that. I'm also available if you need some additional help on how to do that.
So once again, if you have a subscription to My Impact, the web-based system already does the transformation work for your data. If you are using the data collector Google Sheet,
Yep.
Which is the free tool, that data does need to be transformed so that we can use that data in reporting.
That's right. So if those districts using the data collector, that Google Sheet, could share it with us, even before you do the data transformation, then we can be sure that we can see that data. And then finally, the after session mentor user group surveys, that's the surveys that you do with us at the end of each of our mentor session group surveys. So what we've done is we've created
Sorry, Joe, can we open that survey just for a moment?
Absolutely.
One of the things that we wanted to point out with the survey is you're asked some questions, and the questions are around each of the mentor roles that you serve. Please be aware that not every role is going to be included in every meeting. So it's perfectly all right to say, boy, it wasn't this idea of long-range planning, that wasn't a part of our agenda today, so not included in this session. So, you know, we don't anticipate every responsibility with every role being a part of every meeting. So it's perfectly fine to say, boy, that wasn't included in the session. We know that, and we are well aware that we cannot boil the ocean in 2 hours. So what we're trying to do is really based on the toolkit and the portions of the toolkit that you're working towards or working on, those are the roles and responsibilities that we're including in the agenda.
Okay, thank you. So to help you determine whether you've met project partner agreements, what we did was we created checklists for each of you to be able to take a look, and this will communicate to you what we have. So when we have it, we've checked it off. So this is where we're at right now. So you might have felt like we have access to something that we don't, and we wanted to communicate that to you, but these checklists are then for you to be able to just click off and check. Niagara, is it okay if I open up your checklist?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, great. So this is what it looks like for everybody. If we have your project partner agreement document, I've put a check there. Same thing with the participation log completion, checked it off. If I can see your data for any of the baselines or trials, and if I have that, click it off. If you've done the educator survey, I've clicked it off because I can see that information. And then where I have a response from individuals in a district for each of those mentor surveys, it's either not submitted or maybe you weren't at that particular mentor user group. So I just put not submitted where I did not have a submission that day. Don't go back and try to do that submission now, because unless you watch the video and then do that, that's just fine, because some of us can't make it here. and then you watch the video, do the mentor survey after that. So what I'm asking for each of the districts to do is to look in their own checklist, and where you see a check missing, please either provide that if you haven't already, or connect with me or provide it again, because we don't see it and we would like to make sure that we have it before we have to do our mid-year reporting.
We also understand that as districts begin the process, they may expand both teacher teams or their mentor group. We don't expect folks that are joining us or are coming into the process now to do a lot of back work. So, I mean, if we're not telling you not to go and watch the videos, if you want to watch the mentor user group videos for the meetings that you were not yet attending, please feel free to do so. But we're not asking you to do that. We're just, being very conscientious of moving forward, that we have the data that we have as deliverables to the Department of Public Instruction.
Very good. For those of you who haven't started the trials yet and are starting second semester, I want to clarify on the participation log that and I'll share my screen here real quickly. On the participation log, for each teacher, there's a separate row. And then for the class that they are going to observe, we want the total number of students, ELL, students with IEPs and students without IEPs in that observation class. But then when it comes to this next block of information, this is the count of the students that are being observed. So there's the difference between the total number of students within the class that is the class that's being observed, or that includes the indicator students. And then the counts of the indicator students are these next blocks for the baseline, for the trial. Now it's the same students for the baseline, trial 1, trial 2, trial 3. So the counts are likely to be the same for all of the next blocks. But in the event that you have a student that transfers out of the class, or if students have an issue where they end up being absent for that particular trial, that count may change. And so that's why we're asking you to include that count each time that you do a trial.
So I'm seeing that in our spreadsheet, it's not complete. When do you consider the participant log complete? Do you have to have all the data then entered in for that box to be checked? Or do you just have to have your initial kind of numbers in there for that to be checked off? I'm just wondering what we're missing.
Yep.
We've done our baseline. Yep.
Okay. So what I was expecting to see, if you've done your baseline, I'd expect to see the number of indicator students.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But to have the participant log done, does that mean we have to have the baseline data inputted? Is that why it's not checked? I just want to make sure.
No, you don't have to have your data to us.
Yeah.
You will have to have your data to us.
Yes, I know that. Yeah.
Okay. But
for now, if you're looking at this, is this considered complete even without the baseline data to get the box checked? That's all I'm wondering.
Oh, no, it's not. So we need those counts of the indicator students within the baseline collection period. And just to clarify, I would like for everybody to check their own boxes. So I've just done an inventory of the things that we already have. So this is for you to self-check. Did we put this in? Did we not put this in? So you can pat yourself on the back. You don't have to wait for our badge or gold star to be able to check a box. So feel free to check it when you feel like it's done. And if we still need something else, we can follow up with you then.
Joe, one other question I'll just ask out loud. For our special ed teachers and ESL teachers that are involved, we weren't going to do the observations in their class, but more in the classrooms that they support. So would I put numbers in the participant chart? They don't have numbers right now because of that, but should I ask them for numbers then for that also, of just the students on their caseload, or how should I go about that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And I think the intent is to understand the number of students who are receiving the UDL practice. So if in the classroom that the teachers that are doing the observations, if in that classroom, all of the students are experiencing the clear learning goals and the student self-assessment, then we would want that total number of students within that classroom as the number of students who are receiving the UDL treatment per se.
And if it's a co-taught situation or a push-in, and you have a special ed teacher and the general education teacher listed as participants on the team, of course, their numbers would be the same because it's the same class.
Mm-hmm. Did that clarify things, Kari, for you, or is there something that's still not going to work for being able to record that?
No, I think that's helpful. I just have to go back. I'm there tomorrow with them again, so I can clarify that. Because there's no one on here today from.
Perfect. Thanks, Kari. Thank you. All right, we're back at it. So I will share my screen again so we can get back at the agenda.
All right, so we are going to transition into sharing some data with you. So we are midway through our user group sessions for the year. And so what we wanted to do is give you the opportunity to see the data that we've collected and how we use that mentor reflection, feedback, exit survey, if you will, with our project. So Joe and I, each time the survey is administered at the end of our user group network meetings like today, we really ask ourselves two inquiry questions. One is, are we helping mentors develop expertise in the implementation trial mentor roles? Are we helping them with being an effective planner, facilitator, advisor, data guide, learning leader? And are we giving them opportunities also for the project partner requirements? Then we really take it to the next step, which is asking ourselves, are mentors able to navigate the toolkit and the user group platforms and features as designed and as we intend you to have access, or are there barriers you're experiencing? So because we ask ourselves that question each and every user group meeting, we look at the data, and we wanted to share some of the top takeaways and actions that we've taken so far. One of the things that we've noticed since our September training is we've seen a reduction in the agree and strongly agree responses associated with 13 of the 14 mentor roles and responsibilities. So for Joe and I, that is a red flag, because we should see people becoming more confident in their roles, not less confident in their roles. So for us, we said, well, we need to make some changes in order for people to be able to report to us that they feel they agree or strongly agree with the roles and responsibility questions that are being asked. So we have done some changes and taken some actions, and we'll point those out to you. The other takeaway that we found is we've seen a reduction in the agree and strongly agree responses associated with 7 of the 10 questions asking about the toolkit. So instead of people really increasing their use of the toolkit and being able to navigate and use the toolkit, we're seeing a decrease from September. So for us, those two things are what this project is intended to support. And those two things don't seem to be where we are seeing increases in people becoming more confident and comfortable and using the toolkit and the user group more fluidly. So we've said to ourselves, well, this is, you know, why we do this survey, and it's an opportunity for us to monitor and adjust. So one of the first things that we did, and you'll probably notice this on the agenda, is we said, you know, maybe our agenda items, although we understand the roles that we're connecting to each one of our agenda items, maybe our mentors really aren't seeing those connections. So on the agenda, we have included a column that identifies what role for the mentor are we helping to support. So our opening, you will see, that's a facilitation. How do you get people, you know, connected to the content for the meeting? So our discussion board was an opportunity for us to kind of take a poll and say, you know, what roles are you really leveraging and finding yourself in over the last month? The project partner agreements, that's another facilitator role. We want to give you time to complete some of the requirements for being part of the work and for being a project partner. But we also know that if you haven't started your trial work yet and you're really launching second semester, that some of that information is yet to come. And we understand that, but we also want to be sure that we're reporting accurately to DPI. So as a facilitator, it's our responsibility to make people aware of what we need and what we have. And so we've focused on that. You'll also see that our current topic, the mentor user group meeting reflections, that's really modeling and connecting to being a good data guide. We're not going to ask you to complete a survey that we don't look at. So after every mentor network meeting, once we, you know, give time for the surveys to come in, the exit tickets, Joe and I spend time and we comb through each one. If you've said you needed more support or needed help, you've probably gotten an email from us because we follow up from those surveys. But we also know that we didn't intend to boil the ocean in 2 hours with every meeting. So some of the mentor roles may not be included. And if they weren't included, we're hoping that you could, you know, say, yep, this wasn't included, as opposed to strongly disagreeing or disagreeing that we didn't cover it. We know that in some cases, maybe we didn't cover it to the depth that you needed, and the disagree or strongly disagree is a real valuable response for us so that we can better support you. But if it wasn't included, we want to be sure that you kind of know what we intended to support and the roles that we intended to cover and leverage for each meeting. So you'll see the remaining of the parts of the agenda also have different roles and some components, like our next item, actually leverage two of the roles, the learning leader and the advisor side of things. So we're trying to be a little bit better at making those connections for you so you can see how we intend the meetings to support the different mentor roles. The other thing that we have done is we've designed some connection activities in the UDL Forward community and the mentor user group community, just to get people into the communities and navigating those pieces during the meeting. So when we asked the question this morning about which mentor role have you really leveraged in the past month, we asked that question so that people had a way to get back into the community and start navigating within those platforms and being more comfortable finding things, sharing information, and having access to tools. So with that said, we're hoping that we can capture other things that we haven't yet thought about because you weren't in the room for us to ask. So the next part of the agenda is really a wonderful idea exchange that we're hoping we can leverage with you. We have a Padlet that operates very similarly to a Jamboard. So I'm going to let Joe kind of walk you through the Padlet and give you the next steps of what we hope we can learn with you and from you today.
And this mirrors the kind of discussion you may have during your trial reflection meetings with your teams. Our surveys can only give us so much information. Our data can only tell us so much. And we still have questions about how we can do our work better. So our data points us into the direction of questions that are going to help us help you better. And the two questions that we have that we would appreciate your input into so that we can do our jobs better is how can we better connect the meeting agenda items to the development of your mentor roles? In addition to what we did today by adding that column into the agenda. And the second question is, what barriers do you experience in the UDL Forward community when navigating the UDL Implementation Trials Toolkit and the UDL Mentor User Group? If you're unfamiliar with how Padlet works, you'll see that there's a plus button to be able to add a response to either one of those questions. And I will do a test response so you can see what it looks like. And when I publish that, it gives me a card that I can move around. So my response can be for either one of the two questions. If you could just place it over by the question that you're answering with your response. So if you have an answer to both of the questions, please make two cards and put that card in underneath the question that you're answering. So we'll give you a few minutes to do that. I see a couple of statements about planning and connecting, and that we should try to maximize the amount of time on our agendas during our network meetings, that you all have time to connect with each other. And what I was just stating to Michelle is, now that we're at a point where we're going to be repeating for trial 2, the planning, collection, and reflection after today's last section of that data analysis piece, I feel like that's going to be built into our agendas. So I'm hoping that I'm interpreting that correctly from a couple of comments, that you'd like more time to connect with your team as well as other mentors. Michelle, is there anything that you've noticed that?
Yeah, the other piece that I noticed was around agenda items and giving time for teams to discuss what agenda items would be helpful. So Joe and I talked a little bit as we saw the comments coming in on the Padlet. We will gladly send out an email with an all call for what agenda items would you like to see on the monthly agenda. We can also include that in our wrap up But sometimes, you know, at the end of a meeting, you don't know what you need for the next meeting until you're, you know, already working towards the next part of the trial cycle. So we're happy to do that. We are excited to have new opportunities to, you know, create value or more value to the network as we move throughout the year. One of the things that Joe and I are skillfully trying to do is honor where everybody is in the process and know that this isn't lockstep. Everybody isn't moving at the same pace. So to create an opportunity for folks to learn the next part of the trial cycle, but also honor where you are and give you some time to reflect on where you are and ask questions and problem solve has been a priority for us. So if there are any other ideas that you think of throughout the meeting, please let us know. Can they still add to the Padlet?
They can add to the Padlet, or if there's a place on the agenda where you just want to put in a note, you have editing access on the agenda as well, I believe. Yep. So go ahead and add a note on the agenda or a comment.
In the chat, yeah. So anything else that you can think of, we appreciate your responses. As I always say, I'm not a flower, I'm not going to wilt. I'd rather have someone tell me that these are the things that would be helpful. If we don't know, we can't adjust. So, and again, being a data person, we use all of the data that's provided to us, and we really do two things. We use an inquiry process to really investigate and clarify and put meaning to the data. But then we also plan and inform our next steps with the data. So we appreciate both you filling out the surveys, but also giving us feedback on how our meetings can best meet your needs based on where you are in the process. Again, this is UDL, so we want to design for the various teams, but we also want to make sure that we give you time as a team as well.
Well, with that being said, let's just move into the next agenda item where everybody can be able to share things that have worked for them in the planning part of their trial. So the last time we were together, we were on part 5, stage 4, which was the planning piece for trial 1. And some of the folks, some of our districts have gone through that planning process, are either in the middle of their data collection period, or they're at the end of the data collection period, or they may have even moved past the data analysis. So we'd like to open up the stage here for people to share on these 3 data points, and we'll take one data point at a time. So if you have used a resource that helps your teams understand clear learning goals and you found that to be helpful, or if you need help in that, this is our chance to open up the floor for folks to share what's worked for them and what questions they have. So your colleagues can help you out. So that's our first point of conversation. Any resources that you use to help teams understand clear learning goals.
Did anyone use or add to the take and make slide deck that we presented last time as a resource for clear learning goals?
Or perhaps a timing thing. How long did it take you to present that clear learning goals work with your team, and did they connect with that? All right, we're going to move on to the second bullet, but if a thought comes up about clear learning goals, please feel free to include that in the next portion of our discussion. So data collection support you provided or questions you've encountered during your data collection period. So this might get at one of the comments that was on the Padlet. On the Padlet, I think it was, Jeff, you might have made the note that how do you provide individualized? I interpreted the comment different than Michelle did, so I'm going to give you my interpretation, and it might not be what you asked, but how I interpreted that comment was, how do each of you support individuals in a team when they have questions or need extra support in that data collection or putting that data into one of the data tools?
Part of it was also, so underneath the overall piece that we're doing, sometimes teachers have like specific needs to their class, right? And so you have this process, and now you also have a teacher that's unique on their journey of learning and a unique set of students, right? And so there are, things underneath that. And so one of the things that I'm doing is I'm kind of adding a little Jim Knight to the process, right? On top of it. So here is the general thing we're doing, but what do you specifically feel will up-level your thing? And I was just wondering if there's other strategies or thoughts that people have used to keep learning.
Jeff, can you provide just a little bit more of that story? Because I'm not getting a visual in my head about how you use that Jim Knight approach. Can you tell us a story of a particular teacher that you might have had to help that way?
So, for example, there's a teacher that while we're working on talking about the targets and having self-reflection, discussions really are an issue in the classroom. So what is a discussion protocol that will help up-level us upon the target that we're doing? And so now we're bringing in, protocol. I know it's a little bit of trial 3, but they're already at a need of, I need something specifically to up-level me so I can focus on this target. And so, so the process of that impact cycle helps us just clarify that peer goal that then amplifies the UDL cycle. So they're not overwhelmed. They're feeling like I'm really working on what I need, because then I also have a group that just feels like it's too generalized when we talk. And even if we talk individually, when we're talking about learning targets, I have some teachers who have been teaching for many years, right? So what is specifically going on in your class that we can up-level the way we do targets and student self-reflection that's hitting a specific need that makes you feel like this process is worthwhile to me because it's meeting me where I'm at in my journey and the students that I have in front of me. And so it's like just a little bit of piece of, I don't know, I'm finding myself a little piece of trial 3 going, I need you to feel this so that you see a direct connection to up-leveling your skills. Even if you feel like I got that learning target down, now all of a sudden we're seeing how we can up-level the conversations with students about learning targets. We can up-level student reflection. We can up-level because you're feeling a need that is, holding you and the students back. So that's a little bit more if that hopefully clarifies.
I am so glad that you told that bit more because that gets. What was that?
Oh, I said, I'm glad he told that the rest of that story too, because I have a thought too after you, Joe.
Oh, no, you go ahead, Missy.
Well, what I'm thinking about is, so the part of the up-leveling is fantastic, but if it feels like goals and targets are sort of there and like they're really solid and you feel really good about them, in addition to supporting them with sort of what they can do in the classroom to level up the discussion or whatever, I would definitely, after they have identified the targets, I would definitely look at the assessment to make sure the assessment is actually assessing the target. And then usually that's where I see, even among veteran teachers, some level of challenges, because they're looking at the assessment, and the assessment has less option. There's less choices and voices about how to get to that assessment. Usually there's one way to assess that particular learning target. So another way to potentially up level it is, so you have the learning target and you have the assessment. So now if these 3 kids aren't able to meet that assessment, can we do the assessment in a different way to still meet the goal? So after they have that target solidified, look at the assessments, and then also sort of up level by figuring out what the multiple option for assessment could be. But you were essentially doing that when you're thinking about improving the discussion, or the class discussion or whatnot too. Just making sure that there's that direct line between the target and the goal, or the target of their learning goal and the assessment. Usually it's fuzzy.
Yeah, and the part that that really stuck out to me in that story, Jeff, was that trying to isolate clear learning goals as trial 1 treatment, and feeling like we're not supposed to do anything else because we're in trial 1. And again, this is not scientific data that we're collecting, and there is no part of teaching that can isolate one strategy and draw a direct line from cause and effect. So we don't want you to say, okay, we can't do anything else except for putting this one tiny, isolated practice into place, because that's not reality, right? It's not reality. So I really love that you said, you know what, to be able to truly use those clear learning goals with students, we need to get better at discussion in the class. So there's your entry point into really transforming what is happening in the classroom that helps students connect to the benefits that practice that can provide. So I think your story is really helpful, because other people are going to have that same question. Our process is not so tight that we have to isolate an individual practice and try to prevent any other changes from happening.
Yeah, that's really true. Joe, what I like to think about it is, like, there's nothing, it's too vast to be specifically causal.
Mhm.
Right? Like there's no direct cause. There's just too many variables in the whole thing. So it's natural for it to spill over. And I think it's the discussion that gets, that broad discussion and then isolating, so that you can get granular. So as you improve little things in one lesson or trial, you're going to do that, and it's going to compound over time as you make other granular improvements to instruction. So it's like that granular look and examination, change made, continuous change done, and it just compounds in impact. So that makes causal measurement really hard.
Well said. Thank you. What other folks have experienced data collection, barriers and questions that individuals on your teams have brought to you? Okay, let's include our bullet number 3. So if anybody has some feedback for each other about the direction that's provided by the roadmap in planning for the trials, how has that roadmap been impactful in how you work with your teams? Or if you're not using the roadmap, where do you find yourself kind of getting lost on the journey?
Can I just kind of ask a clarifying question, I guess, kind of related to this? So for observation, of the engagement piece, is there, like, I know we have the spreadsheet to collect the data, but is there like a checklist or, I'm trying to really support the district I'm working with by basically giving them everything they need and not, and I mean, obviously they have to create some things within their own room in their classroom, but this is new for everyone, so I'm just trying to support without making it any more, you know, helping with that, like lessening the one more thing, I guess, approach and everything. So I guess I was wondering, I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but as far as the engagement rubric goes, not that it's hard to make one, but I just wanted to know if I was missing anything or if there's something out there that can kind of be used for the people that are observing.
So, are you using My Impact with the teams or the data collector tool?
The data collector tool.
Okay, so, Joe, can I share screen for a moment?
Yep.
Okay, so one of the things that has been really helpful to teams that we've worked with is if you see on the bottom a printable data collection sheet with the engagement rubric right here, that has been the tool that folks have leaned on, the teams that we've worked with in the past, to do the data collection and then enter from the hard copy right back into the tool. So again, I don't know if this is something that you've already tried, but having that printable data collection sheet so that you're not trying to navigate the digital Google sheet during an observation has been really helpful to teams. So, Kari, I don't know if that kind of gets you where you need to go. If you've tried it already, Joe, any other thoughts?
No, that's where my mind was going to, is that printable data collection tool.
Yep, that makes sense. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to, whoops, just lost my, back to sharing my screen. Any other comments about the direction provided from the roadmap in planning the trials? Okay, we want to maximize the next section of our agenda, so I'm going to transition over to Michelle so she can kick off with part 5, stage 5.
Okay, do you want me to share screen? Or?
Yep, I'll unshare my screen.
Okay. All right. So for those of you that have done trial 1 or are thinking ahead to that data analysis piece, one of the things that I want to kind of draw your attention to are the connections that we have with our analysis tool and the WISE-Explore data inquiry process that is used at the state level. When we think about reflection and analysis, really what are we learning from the data? Can we take the numbers and turn it into information? We've set up an analysis tool that is linked to the 4 steps of the WISE-Explore data inquiry process. So this has been our framework. We have provided in the analysis tool some inquiry questions to get you started, but by no means are they intended to be limiting. You can include your own questions as well. We have given you a way to engage with the data so that you can pull out the facts and see, you know, what is the data showing us. We then have given you some opportunities to turn that data into information by formulating some of those descriptive statements. that really clarify what you're learning from the data. And then we give you a way to build that bridge to educator practice, and reflect on the practices as a way to say, you know, how are these practices changing what we know about student engagement or their academic focus? So again, this WISE Explore process has served as the framework for our data analysis. When you look at the sample data analysis tool, and you can find this in the UDL Implementation Trials Toolkit, in the Tools tabs section. So you can see I'm clicking on Tools. And if you scroll down, you'll see the analysis tool. There's the baseline example. So for those of you doing baseline, here's an example of a completed tool that will give you kind of a model to work from. The trial example is available, and then of course the template as well. So that's where you locate the tools in the toolkit. That's one of the things Joe and I also want to do is perhaps we link to the tools for convenience, but we also want to show you in the community where you would find things. We do understand there's a lot of resources and information, and sometimes it can feel overwhelming as you're new and just beginning the process. So when you think about that example tool, what it's going to do is it's going to start you with an inquiry question. So again, you can see those connections to the WISE Explore data inquiry process. So in this case, the inquiry question is around student engagement. And we start with, how has student engagement changed with the implementation of new practices? And what we are asking you to do at that point is to really look at what has been the changes in your data for the percent of the students whose observations were at 3s and 4s, and how did that change from the baseline? So what we're seeing in this example is the percent of observations for all students at 3s and 4s increase from 56% in the baseline to 63% in trial 1. So that would be an example of how to turn those percentages, how to clarify them into a descriptive statement. Then we say, great, so we know what happened for all students. Let's look at the student groups we're focusing on. How about students who have IEPs to no IEPs? How about students' performance when we look at race and ethnicity? What about males versus females? How about proficiency levels? So students who were performing at below basic, did they increase? So this is really giving you the opportunity to say, are we seeing more students scoring in the 3s and 4s range in our different student groups? Then what it's asking you to think about is, what did you learn overall about student engagement as it connects to clear learning goals? Were students more engaged or less engaged? We've given you some sentence stems or some options how to frame some of that findings. So overall, what were your students looking like when it comes to engagement with the use of clear learning goals? The next side of the analysis focuses on your academic rubric. So how has student proficiency in the academic focus area changed with the implementation of new practices? And in this case, it would be the clear learning goals. So again, we're saying now look at your academic rubric observations, and did you see an increase or a decrease from your baseline? And then again, it asks you, how about your student groups? What have you noticed in the percentages of students who are scoring or receiving 3s and 4s? How has that changed for your different student groups? And then finally, really turning that information into, some learning. What did you learn about student proficiency? What was the impact of clear learning goals on the academic focus? Did you see some students doing better? Did you see some students doing better and some students not doing as well? So you can, again, see that we've given you some sentence frames to start with, so that you can open the dialogue, but have those rich conversations around making meaning from the data.
I just want to add in here, Michelle, that these first 2 segments are the consolidated team data, not individual data.
Right. Speaking of individual data, the next part of the tool allows teachers to look at their individual results from baseline to trial 1. So you are getting that same type of inquiry question at the top, and then you're looking at your own student averages, and you're entering the number of students who with increases, the number of students with decreases in each one of these areas, and the percentage of students, the number of students who stayed the same. And then it's asking, as an individual teacher, how has this particular indicator changed from baseline to trial 1? The same opportunity is there for your academic focus. Again, there's the next part. So you could say individual from trial 1 to trial 2. You could say from trial 2 to trial 3.
Right.
Or you could really look at from trial 1 to trial 3 if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But this is, another table ready to go for the next trial. The other thing that we want to do is build that bridge to the educator practice. So you'll see that we're asking through a reflective lens to do a little hypothesizing. How has this UDL implementation trial influenced your practice? So reflecting on describing your current level of skill using the strategy, whether it's clear learning goals or student assessment, self-assessment, student choice, etc. We've given you a way to talk, do you feel like a beginner? Do you feel, you're kind of in that intermediate phase? Do you feel skilled or confident? Do you feel like you're really becoming that expert? And so those are ways for you to reflect on your practice using the strategy. And then do a little bit of, thinking around how has implementing that strategy influenced your perception of your students' ability or your own ability to impact student learning? How effective was your design for learning to grow students' ability to be expert learners? And then how has collecting this observational data impacted your classroom practice? So it's really looking at, the UDL practice as well as the practice of using a plan, do, study, act cycle at the classroom level. So the analysis tool is intended to do 2 things. It's intended to give you a way to investigate the data and turn that information turn that data into information. And it's also building a bridge to, what does our student data look like and how is our educator practice influencing our students' learning, engagement, and how we think about our ability to impact students at the classroom level.
And we want to also just remind you that during this data analysis and reflection meeting is the time to administer that 23-24 UDL educator practices and student learning survey. So that is again linked back on our agenda. And I'll just share my screen again to,
I got it.
oh, okay. So having each of your teachers fill that out during that meeting ensures that we receive that information.
And again, you will get that information back also, so that you can use that data to really look at how are the trials influencing, impacting both students learning and educator practice for those educators that are on the implementation team.
Where that request might not have been clear before is on the mentor planner infographic that we shared with you. So we clarified that language and updated that infographics. So let me just really quickly show that to you, and then we're going to set you off on your planning time. So prior to today, there was some confusion within our infographic that put that survey in multiple places, that it looked like it was happening after and before analyses. So we clarified the language to say prepare to administer the UDL educator practices student and learning survey before that data analysis meeting, baseline data analysis meeting. And again, before each trial reflection, you prepare to administer that survey to teachers on those teams. So we just want to make you aware that we updated that. Well, it is that time of the meeting again for us to wrap up the work that we've done together. I just put the link to the survey into the chat. So if you would please take the opportunity. If you didn't, I know I put that link also into the breakout room chat. So if you've taken that survey already, we appreciate it. If you haven't, please open up the survey link in the agenda or in the chat and complete that survey following this session. Our next meeting date is January 10th from 9 until 11. There, we're going to talk about the trial reflection follow-up, where you get to share what worked and what didn't work. And some of our folks will be just entering into their baseline trial. So all of your stories are definitely helpful for them to be able to be prepared to kick off their work second semester. And we'll go through a quick trial planning refresh and give you plenty of time to be able to plan for the next trial planning meeting. And then we will introduce the May showcase guidelines that we've put into place. So project partner reminders, complete the project partner requirement checklist items and then check them off on your checklist. That's there for you to be able to keep track and for us to know if you intended us to receive something that we haven't. Do administer the educator practice and student learning survey during all of your trial reflection meetings. And then as a May showcase foreshadowing, we want to remind you to continue collecting artifacts, photos, quotes, rubric examples, roadmap examples, data analysis tool examples that you've created, impact statements that you hear, any anecdotal stories, videos of team meetings that you have, because we'll use those in addition to you using them for your May showcase. We will use those as enhancements to the UDL implementation trials mentor toolkit. And with that being said, I want to open up the floor for any final thoughts anybody has. And then I'll let Michelle sign us off.
Can I ask a clarifying question quick? I apologize if you said this already. So in order to allow staff who's doing these trials, that Google form that you gave us, do we copy that link, or because then it goes under my email, or what is the best way to give that to them?
Yep, copy the link that we're giving you, because then it goes to our sheet. And I use a process to separate that out, so you will get all the Rhinelander data, but I have all of the data collected into our one sheet.
And it'll be under my name because it's my email address is attached to that when I open that document up.
Yes. Yep. I'll turn back the Rhinelander data to you and you will have access to that information.
All right, so we are at 10:59. Any final thoughts for the good of the group? Well, Joe and I want to wish everyone a very happy holiday season. We are, again, feel very honored to be able to have the support of the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction with the funding to offer this time for us to get together and provide the resources and tools to help support your UDL work with your districts and your teams. So happy holidays, happy new year, and we will see you in 2024. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.